long winters in North Dakota, what we need here is theater.
The great thing about the theater is if you get involved, that passion is always there, and that passion never dies.
Look at her, Papa. She's right there.
Fargo is known for many things, and I think in the right circles, LCT is one of them.
The Little Country Theater has existed for 100 years. How many things do we have at any institution that have really lasted that long?
Production funding for this program is provided by the North Dakota State University Division of Performing Arts, NDSU Development Foundation Centennial Endowment, Major General Schroeder and Jean Schroeder, and by the members of Prairie Public.
I think it's particularly important to understand how Alfred Arvold fits in as an exemplar of the institution of which he was a part here, North Dakota Agricultural College. It's a land-grant college and called in those days an agricultural college too. But of course, a land-grant college was never just about agriculture, although that's an important primary mission. It also was about better living, particularly country living. Alfred Arvold then believed that he had a personal mission as part of the institutional mission to make life better at the grassroots in North Dakota. And being a theater guy, that meant theater. We needed to have theater everywhere across the Northern Plains. And we needed people who would learn theater here at North Dakota Agricultural College so they could go out and do it and spread the gospel across the countryside.
It was started as a part of the Little Theater movement across the whole country. The official formation was in February of 1914 on Abraham Lincoln's birthday. He had an attachment to Lincoln that I think that drove many of the date selections in terms of the things that he did.
There were only a few little country theaters like NDSU when it first started, and it was, it was a showcase for bringing theater to communities and these small units in rural areas.
Alfred G. Arvold came to the NDAC campus in 1907. He got his degree in 1905 from University of Wisconsin. And he was hired in the area of oratory in the English department. And he was also hired to handle all public programming for the university, so that meant graduations. And he was also really responsible for recruiting, bringing recognition to the university.
And he was known everywhere. I have in my scrapbook a little map of the countries that were affected by the Little Country Theater.
He was very outgoing, had very big ideas, didn't worry about details, as I understand. I mean, it was more the big concept. Again, he came from Wisconsin, the idea of circuses and that kind of largeness, I think, was part of his activity.
He had this dream of planting lilacs all the way to Grand Forks. And he wanted the university to come to Hillsboro and this way, and we would go to Hillsboro, and there'd be this whole row of lilacs. So every spring we'd have lilac days, Lilac Queen and Queen Princesses, and we would go and stop at the towns between here and Hillsboro and put on skits, music things. Well, we just had a wonderful time. And I think the townspeople liked it too, and we planted the lilacs, but they didn't ever seem to grow. We seemed to plant them every year.
Then he also went out around the state with the Student Life Train. It went to Devil's Lake, Minot, Bismarck, and one of the other cities in the southern part of the state. They did whistle stops all along the way, and they performed in these towns. The band went, the theater went, the home economics students did the food preparation, the students ran the trains.
He was very much about taking theater to the people, creating spectacles, pageants. One of his community projects was to turn El Zagal's area into a bowl where he could stage major historical dramas, and he'd have thousands of people participating. And he'd have horses and buggies, and very much about making sure that people in the rural environment had opportunities to appreciate cultural things. When they did the historical pageants initially in North Dakota, it was a part of the acculturation for preparing the new immigrants to learn about American history. And they would do these things on the 4th of July, or they would do them where they would be, a huge event, and there would be thousands of people, like 30,000 people would come. Everybody would come and watch this. It was about participation. And that was the good feelings that you got when you were in a theater production. And they often would say, we weren't very talented, we weren't very good, but he made us feel so good about doing it because we did the best we could.
He was truly embracing what a land-grant college does. It has research and it has education, but it has the outreach, and he established outreach. And so he felt that the lending library, for example, that he had created could help all these little tiny towns coming from this little country theater.
It started with scripts that Alfred Arvold had brought with him from Wisconsin when he came to North Dakota. And he got a letter from a teacher who said, do you have some plays that we might think about doing out here? And so he sent her some scripts. And apparently that teacher talked to another teacher, and so he started getting these letters from people in communities who wanted him to share with them. So he started collecting more, and so he had a whole big library of one-act plays, three-act plays, skits, things that could be performed by the common person without a lot of staging. But there were also, from what I understand, there were also how-to type packages, how to do makeup, how to build a flat, how to do the different kinds of things that would be a part of these programs.
The physical space up in Old Main was called the Little Country Theater, but it was also a program that included the lending library, the package library, and the outreach programs, and the idea of community centers.
Initially, they did performances downtown, the Opera House, because what they had in Old Main here was a chapel, and eventually that's converted into the theater, but initially it was not really considered to be a performing space. And so then that was eventually converted at the time of the Little Country Theater's founding, converted into that performance space.
Small theater, beautiful little theater. I think it's seated 350 people, and it was the stage was small. Oh, they had beautiful stained glass windows depicting things, scenes from Shakespeare.
Well, initially it was an empty attic space. Back in 1916, they turned into what they called the hayloft, which I think they just simply put in a floor. It was still cold up here, so it couldn't be used in other seasons, but they wanted to use it. And in 1923, then they decided to convert it actually into what they now call the Lincoln Log Cabin, or the Lincoln Cabin. So those people that came in, like for the Lyceum, they would have them here and host them at dinners beforehand or perhaps afterwards. They used it as a place to build scenery. Above this level is where they had the costume shop and the property shop. So it was a very functional space as well. The Lyceum series was started in 1910 as a citizens lecture course and continues in a much different way now, but 100 years later. It brought some of the most outstanding artists to this area.
That was a highlight, of course, the Little Country Theater, his sponsorship of all these wonderful artists coming to little old Fargo, on the prairie, so to speak.
Because he had so many other contacts from other adventures of his around the country, and then being very involved as a Freemason and the Shriners. He had made contacts in show business all over the world. And so he had virtually every famous name that was appearing on stage coming to North Dakota Agricultural College and performing everywhere from Elsa Lanchester and Charles Lawton, and virtually everybody in between. We're all coming to NDAC.
The one I remember the most, for some reason, was Harpo Marx. And of course, he was such a riot in the show, and then afterwards, very quiet and subdued. And he was a nice man.
The most interesting was the Baroness Van Trapp. The whole family was there, and after the concert, he always had the artists come up to the log cabin for, most of the time it was a turkey dinner. Afterwards, the 7 girls took care of all the dishes, washing the dishes. I was a little embarrassed by that, but they just all fit right in.
I think it's an incredible heritage to think that this theater was established at a time when it was such an isolated sense of community, and people were working, I think, very hard. And I think and there was really no financial support to speak of from the college for this theater. In other words, the box office is what paid for the next production. So there was not initially, with Mr. Arvold, there was not a financial support, and so it was a creative way of doing theater, I think. And again, he was very committed in terms of to bringing opportunities for the communities to thrive in an artistic way, in a way that took away the drudgery. Dr. Fred Walsh came in to take over the program, and he perhaps more legitimized the academic part of the program and created a Department of Speech, eventually Speech and Drama.
Fred was more of a, you're cast and you play a role that you're suited for and you develop that character. That was the kind of the difference between the early era, the Arvold era, and then what Fred Walsh brought. And so of course there would be that crossover between the two of them was at times perhaps a little uneasy, because it was a whole different perspective that Fred brought, and it took the Little Country Theater to a different place than it had been.
He was interested in outdoor drama, which interestingly, Mr. Arvold had that same interest as well. During the time that Dr. Fred Walsh was here, they created the Old Four Eyes, which is now the Medora Musical out in the western part of the state.
There was a reporter, and she was trying to raise $20,000, an amount like that, to do a production. And Fred said something like, if you want to raise $20,000 to just do one production, why don't you raise $50,000 and create something that will last for a lifetime?
He co-wrote in terms of that and directed in terms of, worked with that through the initial part of that. I think that was outreach too. It created opportunities for students in the theater program and the speech program here to participate.
It was a gorgeous setting. I mean, gorgeous. I went out and performed in that for him when I was Miss North Dakota. They gave me a little bit thing that I could do just to get me on the stage and to advertise it. It was probably comparatively a pretty simple production back then.
Fred Walsh created the Prairie Stage, and we would put together a repertory of shows that were suitable for summer fair. And he had built this marvelous tent.
You set up a tent that sat about 200 people, and no elephants. It was a trial. You'd go in the night before and stake all the stakes, and the next morning you get up at about 4 o'clock in the morning, set the show, and take a rest, and come back and do a show at night. So it was really out there, really doing grassroots into field theater.
They generally performed about 10 different towns, and they did 8 performances in each town. They did 3 productions. One would run 3 nights, another one 3 nights, and then they had a children's show that would run matinees and the thing. And so that was a real outreach for the university.
For them, I think it was a recruiting program, but at the same time, the public loved it. They came in, they saw shows, they went out happy.
The Prairie Stage really gave you an opportunity to work in theater at every level. We were the techies, we were the actors, we were the roustabouts, we were everything, and gave a real appreciation and a well-rounded experience in the theater. It was in the fall of the year, and there was a production of 1776. And my wife Martha had the female lead. She'd been recruited to come to NDSU by Fred Walsh. I came and saw her in this production. And I knew people in the show because I had graduated from here, so I went backstage and I was going to sweep this woman off her feet. And next to her was this really big, good-looking guy, maybe 6'2", whatever. He had his arm around her and it was very chummy, and I said, well, the heck with that.
Later, when we were performing the Fantastics here in this building,
she had the female lead in that, and of course she was wonderful, sang like a bird, gorgeous, all of those things. And I went, well, what the hey, I'm going backstage again, because I knew people in that show as well.
He came backstage and
there's no guy standing next to her. So I go, well, all right. I walk up to her, I grab her hand, I look into her eyes.
And he said, I fell in love with you when I saw you in 1776, and you've done nothing tonight to disappoint me. And then he walked away. Oh, he was also theatrical.
So thanks to the Little Country Theater, 36 years later, I'm happily married to the same wonderful woman I saw on stage.
Fred was a guy who got things done. Fred had a way of positioning himself so that he could maximize people, resources for the thing that he loved the most, and that was theater.
And he was this interesting mix of theatrics, politics, and business. He had a really solid business mind, knew what he wanted to do as far as running the theater was concerned. And that was his training in theater, so he knew that. But he was a politician, and he was a really good politician, and I don't know, maybe the only theater head in history that was also interim athletic director. And that doesn't happen very often. And that was because he knew the system and he knew how things worked, and when that job was open, apparently the president of the university thought, well, he's our man for a while.
We know how great athletics are and how revered they are at NDSU. And I think from that, he was able to rub shoulders with people who could benefit his cause of improving the facilities and raise the visibility of the Little Country Theater. In fact, the Askinase Hall we're sitting in right now was very much a Fred Walsh contribution.
Dr. Walsh and the whole staff was so proud of Askinase Hall. And of course, you know, he had brought this, and it was the first building, of course, built on any college campus by private funds. And so he didn't really care to show me the old Little Country Theater. This was my Little Country Theater.
When they moved to Askinase Hall, they separated that name from the actual physical place. So now we are just the Little Country Theater, or LCT Productions, which includes all of the different things that we do, like the musical theater troupe and the Newfangled Theater Company, and the To Be Determined, our improv troupe, and we hope someday, soon, a dance company. In addition, we're still continuing to bring in guest artists for residencies. In the past couple of years, we've had the opportunity to have an Indian master dancer work for an entire semester that ended in a production with our students of the recognition of Shakuntala. Another semester, we brought in a Kyogen master artist, Tokuro Miyake, and that ended in a production as well of Wakashi, an evening of one-act comedies. We've had Andrew Lippa here for a semester. He's a Broadway composer, right now has Big Fish running on Broadway. He did master classes and performances with our students. We've had numerous other guest directors and guest designers.
But in my experience, love often survives distance better than it does proximity.
It's a tough dream to want to pursue theater, either in acting, directing, or in as a teacher. So it's nice to know that the arts were really, from so long ago, they kept fueling the idea of cultivating the arts for these people and for the Fargo-Moorhead area. It's really, it's a cornerstone of that Twin City.
Just that the inflection should be happy.
Some of the professors that I've met through the years have absolutely inspired me. Through Don LaRue, we've learned so much about Fred Walsh and Alfred Arvold, and through those men, learning more about our heritage as a little theater. It's so remarkable that this tiny college in Fargo, North Dakota has such rich history.
Having a degree from North Dakota has really made me more marketable in the theater opera world, because people see that, and so that gets them interested in reading the rest of the stuff on my resume.
Okay, so let us see that, a little bit of the...
We have students that are out working as scene designers. We have them working as scenic artists, painters. We have actors that have worked in New York and have done touring productions as well. And we have stage management training program. We have a couple of really fine students that are working in that field in terms of the moment. So I think there's quite a broad spectrum of opportunities for the students.
It was a really good comprehensive experience. I have a lot of friends here who work in my particular industry of scenic art that come from a variety of backgrounds, but I find that the people that come from programs like Little Country Theater, you get a very full understanding of production.
People need to be prepared to go out and create theater wherever they land, that you're not, you can't just count on being one part, but you have to be ready to fill in with whatever's needed wherever you go. And that was definitely the training, the heritage of the Little Country Theater, teaching people that you can set up a theater in a barn, literally, if you need to.
At NDSU, you get that experience of what it is to really be an all-around theater professional, not just an actor, not just a designer, but a theater professional.
And this goes in between.
You will do everything from stage management to directing, from designing to playing the leading role. I'm not saying you'll fill all those positions, but the opportunities are there. If you work hard enough, you'll get them. And my experiences at NDSU with Little Country Theater are something that are going to live with me until my dying days.
It seemed natural. It seemed like you're actually having this conversation.
Yeah, your instincts.
They were great mentors and leaders, and there was a high level of professionalism and intensity that they instilled in all of us, because they all exhibited that the whole time we were there.
Every instructor has the best interests of every student in their mind, and everyone is constantly watching the entire department to see where people can grow and how to stretch different people.
Not Sweeney. Not Sweeney Todd.
I had professors who would cast me in roles that I didn't expect to be cast in, so I had to stretch myself as a performer, really try to heighten my sense of creativity and my ability to perform in different circumstances. So that was really an incredible experience.
Who are you? Because I have a feeling I might know. I said it doesn't matter. Well, have you ever taken a life?
NDSU's program is very unique because it truly prepares you for a life in professional theater. So you learn about audition situations, you learn about making it in New York, how to scrape together enough money to pay your rent while still going on auditions every night.
John's waiting on us. Our boat leaves at noon.
The nice thing is there are so many successful NDSU alum in New York that you really have this Bison Nation, as we call it, already there, a support system of these wonderful artists that know where you're coming from and are so happy for you and so supportive.
We were promised passage.
It was a great springboard for me to go to New York, and it was a great group of people and a great theater, and they really did top quality work, and I just so appreciate that I had that opportunity.
Such short-lived.
There's nothing more important in the lives of human beings than the self-expression that comes from the creation of art.
Like the heaven's glorious sun.
I look forward to what is possible for the theater students and the community that experiences the Little Country Theater in the next century.
A happy 100th anniversary to the Little Country Theater.
Happy 100th birthday, Little Country Theater.
Happy birthday, Little Country Theater.
100 going strong, hope to see the second 100.
Happy birthday, Little Country Theater.
Have a great time this year, and congratulations.
I wish a great 100th anniversary to my alma mater here at NDSU and the Little Country Theater.
Happy birthday, Little Country Theater. Wishing you many more years to come.
Cheers to the Little Country Theater on celebrating its centennial.
Happy birthday, LCT. It's been a great 100 years. Hope you have 100 more.
Happy 100th anniversary, Little Country Theater.
Happy 100th birthday, Little Country Theater.
Thanks for the memories, and here's to many, many more.
Happy 100 years, Little Country Theater. I love you.
Happy anniversary, Little Country Theater. 100 great years of theater on the plains.
Happy 100th year anniversary, Little Country Theater.
NDSU Little Country Theater, congratulations on your 100th anniversary.
Have a happy, happy birthday.
Happy 100 years, Little Country Theater.
Happy 100th, LCT.
From New York City, I'd like to wish you a very happy 100th anniversary.
Happy 100 years. Mwah!
To order a DVD copy of The Little Country Theater, please call 1-800-359-6900 or visit our online store at prairiepublic.org. Thank you.
Production funding for this program is provided by the North Dakota State University Division of Performing Arts, NDSU Development Foundation Centennial Endowment, Major General Schroeder and Jean Schroeder, and by the members of Prairie Public.